Most riders think they know what their motorcycle is capable of. The truth is, they've only experienced the version manufacturers allow them to have. Hidden inside modern bikes are restrictions designed for emissions tests, noise regulations, liability concerns, and warranty departments, not performance. Today, we're counting down 17 forbidden motorcycle mods that riders swear actually work. Some unlock power, some transform throttle response, some completely change how a bike feels. And before we reach number 1, you'll discover the factory limitation that makes almost every modification on this list possible in the first place. Number 17, muffler baffle removal. This is probably the most infamous motorcycle modification ever created. It costs almost nothing, takes very little effort, and has been irritating regulators for decades. Because hidden inside countless factory exhaust systems is a simple component whose entire job is keeping the motorcycle quiet: the muffler baffle. Manufacturers install these inserts for a reason. Noise laws grow stricter every year, and passing certification tests means controlling exactly how much sound leaves the tailpipe. So the exhaust is engineered not only to move gases, but also to silence the motorcycle. Many riders believe that silence comes at a price. Pull the baffle out and the transformation is immediate. The exhaust note becomes deeper, sharper, and far more aggressive. Suddenly, the motorcycle feels raw, mechanical, alive. Some riders even notice quicker revving and a more eager response when rolling on the throttle. But this is where reality pushes back. Factory fueling was designed around that restriction. Remove it carelessly, and low-end drive can soften, deceleration popping may appear, and the extra noise can attract exactly the kind of attention most riders would rather avoid. Yet despite the compromises, riders keep removing baffles year after year, because once you hear what the engine truly sounds like, it becomes difficult not to wonder what other factory limitations are still hiding farther upstream in the exhaust itself. Now, if this is your kind of content, the stuff riders usually learn after years of ownership, expensive mistakes, and countless garage conversations, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. That support is what allows us to keep bringing real motorcycle knowledge instead of recycled internet advice. Number 16, catalytic converter delete. Most riders never see it, yet this single component quietly shapes how every modern motorcycle breathes. The catalytic converter lives deep inside the exhaust system, and its primary mission is reducing harmful emissions. Manufacturers need it to satisfy strict environmental standards, but cleaning exhaust gases comes with a compromise. Exhaust flow must pass through a dense internal structure, creating resistance before those gases ever leave the motorcycle. This is why so many riders remove it, replace the catalytic converter with a freer flowing mid-pipe, and the motorcycle often feels more responsive. The engine can spin up with less effort, throttle reaction may sharpen, and the exhaust note usually becomes deeper and more aggressive. Riders also appreciate the reduction in heat, especially during slow traffic or summer riding. But this modification is far from perfect. Increased emissions, possible warning lights, fueling irregularities, and legal concerns all enter the picture. And without proper tuning, some motorcycles actually perform worse. A catalytic converter delete helps the engine exhale more efficiently, but airflow works both ways. Once riders free up the exhaust side, attention naturally shifts to the intake side, and that's exactly where the next upgrade enters the conversation. Number 15, high-flow air filter upgrade. This is one of the most overlooked performance mods, yet it directly affects something every engine depends on: airflow. Hidden inside the Airbox, the factory air filter is built for durability, long service life, noise control, and consistent performance in all conditions. Maximum airflow is only part of the equation. High-flow filters take a different approach. By reducing intake resistance, they allow the engine to breathe more freely. Riders often report sharper throttle response, a stronger mid-range, and a more willing feel under acceleration, especially when combined with exhaust or tuning upgrades. Still, once riders improve airflow at the filter, the next question becomes obvious. How much more air is the Airbox itself allowing in? Number 14, Airbox snorkel removal. Most riders focus on the exhaust and completely overlook the narrow passage feeding air into the engine. That is a mistake. Hidden inside many factory airboxes is a snorkel specifically engineered to quiet intake noise, stabilize airflow, and satisfy certification testing. Manufacturers design these passages carefully because a quieter motorcycle is easier to certify, easier to sell, and easier to keep within regulations. The problem is that silence often comes with restriction. Remove the snorkel, and the engine can draw air through a less confined path. Riders frequently describe the motorcycle as feeling more willing to rev, especially higher in the range where airflow demand increases. But the change most people notice first is not performance, it is sound. Suddenly, every twist of the throttle unleashes a deep induction roar from beneath the tank, giving the motorcycle a far more aggressive character. So let's hear from you too. Have you ever modified an intake system and immediately felt a difference, or spent money expecting gains that never showed up? Leave a comment below and share your experience. The best motorcycle advice often comes from riders who've actually tested these things themselves. Removing the snorkel reveals how much airflow manufacturers intentionally manage. But once riders start thinking about airflow, volume is only part of the story. The next modification focuses on something even more important: how that air actually enters the engine. Number 13, velocity stack upgrade. This is one of those modifications most riders never see, yet race engineers obsess over it. Hidden deep inside the intake system are funnel-shaped components called velocity stacks, and their job is deceptively simple: help air enter the engine more efficiently. That matters because engines do not just need air, they need smooth, controlled airflow. Sharp edges and abrupt transitions create turbulence, disrupting the air rushing toward the cylinders. Velocity stacks are designed to minimize that disturbance. Their curved entrances guide air cleanly into the throttle bodies, improving cylinder filling and helping the engine breathe more effectively. The results can be impressive. Riders often report stronger pull in specific parts of the rev range, improved throttle precision, and a smoother delivery of power. But there is a catch. Stack length changes everything. Longer designs usually favor torque, while shorter versions often benefit high RPM performance. Velocity stacks improve airflow efficiency, but they also make riders pay closer attention to the emission systems surrounding the engine. That's when another controversial factory component starts attracting attention, and it brings us to the next modification on the list. Number 12, pair valve, or AIS delete. Hidden on thousands of motorcycles sits a strange little system that contributes absolutely nothing to making your bike feel faster, sharper, or more exciting to ride. Yet manufacturers continue installing it everywhere. Why? Because sometimes regulations matter more than performance. The pair valve, sometimes called the AIS system, exists for one purpose alone: pumping fresh oxygen into the exhaust after combustion, so emissions tests look cleaner on paper. From an environmental standpoint, it does its job. But the moment riders begin installing aftermarket exhausts or dialing in custom tuning, this harmless-looking system suddenly becomes a headache. Deceleration popping grows louder, exhaust readings become less consistent, and tuners start fighting variables that should not exist in the first place. Remove it, and the bike feels mechanically cleaner, tuning becomes far more predictable, and unnecessary emissions hardware disappears. Deleting the AIS system often sparks a bigger realization. Modern motorcycles are controlled as much by sensors as they are by hardware. Once riders begin questioning emissions equipment, the next target is usually the sensor feeding information back to the ECU. Number 11, oxygen sensor bypass or delete. There is one component on modern motorcycles quietly making decisions for you every single time you twist the throttle. And most riders have absolutely no idea how much control it really has. The oxygen sensor constantly monitors exhaust gases, feeding information back to the ECU, so the motorcycle can adjust fueling around emissions targets and fuel economy priorities. From the manufacturer's perspective, this system works exactly as intended, but many experienced riders argue it creates something far more frustrating: overly lean fueling, hesitant throttle transitions, and a bike that never feels completely natural at steady speeds. Bypass that sensor, and suddenly fueling behavior often becomes smoother, cleaner, and far more predictable, especially on motorcycles already running intake or exhaust upgrades. The controversy is obvious. You are interfering directly with the machine's electronic decision-making. At this point, we've crossed from simple bolt-on modifications into changes that directly affect how the motorcycle delivers power. Have you ever done a modification that completely changed the personality of your bike, for better or worse? Leave a comment below, because the lessons riders learn in the real world are often the ones nobody finds in a service manual. Bypassing the oxygen sensor changes the way the motorcycle manages fueling, which is why so many riders view it as a gateway into electronic tuning. Yet even when fueling becomes more aggressive, some motorcycles still feel strangely filtered between the rider's wrist and the engine's response. That's because fuel isn't the only thing manufacturers regulate. In many bikes, airflow itself is being managed after the throttle is already opened. And uncovering that hidden layer leads us directly to the next modification. Number 10, secondary throttle plate removal. This is where motorcycle engineering starts getting a little deceptive. On many modern fuel-injected bikes, twisting the throttle does not actually mean you are getting full control of the engine. Hidden inside the throttle body sits a second set of electronically controlled plates, and their entire job is deciding how much power the ECU allows you to access, regardless of what your wrist is demanding. Manufacturers built them to smooth power delivery, reduce emissions, control noise, and make aggressive motorcycles feel safer for everyday riders. But for enthusiasts, that often feels like the machine hesitating when instant response should already be there. Remove those secondary plates, and suddenly the connection between rider and engine feels dramatically sharper. Throttle reaction becomes more immediate, acceleration hits harder, and the motorcycle starts feeling raw instead of filtered. Removing secondary throttle plates can make a motorcycle feel dramatically more direct, stripping away some of the electronic smoothing manufacturers build into modern bikes. But riders who experience that newfound responsiveness often notice something interesting. Even with airflow entering the engine more freely, there can still be moments where the exhaust side seems to hold things back. That observation points toward another factory-controlled system, one that actively changes exhaust behavior depending on engine speed. And that's exactly where the next modification enters the conversation. Number 9, exhaust servo delete. Most riders assume exhaust systems are simple: burn fuel, push gases out, make power. But hidden inside many modern motorcycles sits a small electronic gatekeeper quietly deciding how freely your engine is allowed to breathe. It is called the exhaust servo, and for performance enthusiasts, this little device has become one of the most controversial components manufacturers continue building into modern machines. At lower revs, the valve partially closes to reduce noise, satisfy emissions testing, and carefully shape how power is delivered. Sounds harmless, but many riders argue this is just another engineered compromise standing between the engine and its natural character. Remove the servo system, and suddenly exhaust flow becomes consistent, throttle behavior feels cleaner, and aftermarket systems stop fighting factory interference. There is another advantage too: fewer cables, fewer motors, fewer parts waiting to fail years down the road. Deleting the exhaust servo removes yet another layer of manufacturer intervention, and for many riders, the motorcycle immediately feels more honest. But after enough forbidden modifications start stacking together, a larger problem emerges. The engine is now breathing differently, flowing differently, and behaving differently than the factory software was ever designed to manage. At that point, hardware stops being the biggest limitation. The next answer lives inside the motorcycle's digital brain, and it's the modification many riders consider the most powerful of them all. Number 8, ECU flash or ECU remap. This is where motorcycle tuning stops being mechanical and starts becoming psychological. Because at this point, riders are no longer changing parts bolted onto the machine. They are rewriting the machine's own mind. The ECU controls nearly everything happening behind the scenes: fueling, ignition timing, throttle sensitivity, rev behavior, cooling strategy, even how aggressively power gets delivered when you ask for it. But manufacturers never program these systems for pure performance. They calibrate them around emissions laws, warranty protection, fuel economy targets, and long-term durability margins. In other words, the motorcycle leaves the factory intentionally holding something back. A proper ECU flash changes all of that. Suddenly, throttle inputs feel sharper, acceleration becomes noticeably stronger, hesitation disappears, and the entire power band feels far more alive. This is why experienced tuners call it the modification that makes every other upgrade finally work together. An ECU flash is often the moment riders realize just how much authority the factory software has over the motorcycle. Fueling improves, throttle response sharpens, and power delivery finally starts matching the engine's true potential. But as impressive as those gains can be, many riders eventually run into a hard boundary that tuning alone doesn't always erase. No matter how healthy the engine feels, there's still a point where the motorcycle simply refuses to go any faster. That artificial ceiling is exactly why attention shifts to the next restriction manufacturers deliberately build into the system. Number 7, speed limiter removal. There is a frustrating truth buried inside many modern motorcycles that most riders never discover until they start digging into ECU tuning. Sometimes your motorcycle is physically capable of going faster, but the factory has already decided you are not allowed to access that performance. Hidden deep inside the ECU are electronic speed governors designed to cap acceleration, restrict throttle behavior in certain gears, and impose artificial ceilings long before the engine ever reaches its true capability. And here is the uncomfortable part. These restrictions often exist not because the motorcycle cannot handle more, but because manufacturers must satisfy liability concerns, tire certifications, insurance pressures, and regulatory agreements. Remove that limiter, and suddenly the bike begins delivering performance. It was engineered to produce from the beginning. High-speed acceleration feels freer, throttle behavior becomes less restricted, and the machine finally stops feeling electronically restrained. Removing a speed limiter eliminates one of the most obvious electronic barriers a manufacturer can impose. Yet it also reveals something surprising. Many motorcycles aren't restricted in just one place. Long before the limiter ever activates, factory programming is often quietly reducing performance throughout the rev range for reasons that have nothing to do with mechanical capability. Once riders discover that hidden layer of control, the search naturally moves toward the next answer, hiding deeper inside the ECU. Number 6, restricted factory power map removal. Here is something most riders never realize the first time they throw a leg over a brand new motorcycle. Sometimes the engine is not underperforming because it lacks capability. It is underperforming because the factory deliberately told it to. Hidden deep inside the ECU are conservative power maps quietly controlling how aggressively the motorcycle is allowed to behave. Manufacturers often soften throttle opening, reduce power delivery in certain gears, trim ignition timing, and intentionally dull acceleration for reasons that have nothing to do with what the engine can physically handle. Reliability targets, emissions laws, licensing restrictions, legal liability. All of it forces engineers to leave performance sitting unused. Replace that restricted map with proper tuning, and the transformation can feel immediate. Throttle response sharpens, acceleration wakes up, and the motorcycle suddenly feels like it finally remembered what it was built to do. But once riders discover their engine has been electronically restrained from day one, they begin uncovering another hidden truth. Sometimes even the drivetrain itself is being programmed to hold power back before it ever reaches the pavement. And that's where the spotlight leaves the ECU and moves toward the next component responsible for translating engine output into real-world acceleration. Number 5, performance sprocket conversion. Most riders assume acceleration comes from horsepower. It doesn't, at least not as much as they think. Here is something that surprises a lot of riders the first time they experience it. A motorcycle can feel dramatically quicker without gaining a single horsepower. That sounds impossible until you look at the parts quietly controlling how power reaches the rear tire. Every chain-driven motorcycle relies on sprockets to transfer force from the engine to the pavement. From the factory, those sprocket sizes are chosen to satisfy a long list of competing priorities. Engineers must balance acceleration, fuel economy, cruising comfort, emissions requirements, noise testing, durability, and rider expectations. The result is a setup designed to work well for almost everyone, not necessarily excite any one rider. Performance gearing changes that balance. By fitting a smaller front sprocket, a larger rear sprocket, or both, the motorcycle gains a mechanical advantage. Suddenly, the engine reaches its power band sooner. Roll on acceleration feels stronger. Corner exits become more energetic. The bike responds with a sense of urgency that simply was not there before. This is why racers and experienced street riders have trusted gearing changes for decades. The improvement is not hidden on a dyno sheet. You can feel it the moment the throttle opens. But there is always a compromise. Shorter gearing usually raises cruising engine speed, trims some top-end performance, and can slightly increase fuel consumption. Even so, many riders consider the trade worthwhile because the motorcycle feels lighter, sharper, and far more alive. And once acceleration starts feeling this immediate, attention naturally shifts towards something even more controversial: the technology that allows riders to change gears faster than the factory ever intended. That realization opens the door to the next modification riders swear by when chasing smoother, faster acceleration. Number 4, quick shifter installation or activation. There is a reason riders get addicted to this modification after a single ride. Not because it adds horsepower, because it removes hesitation. Every time you shift gears, the motorcycle experiences a tiny interruption. Power stops flowing. Momentum pauses. The engine and transmission briefly negotiate before acceleration resumes. Most riders never notice how often this happens until they experience a bike that no longer needs the conversation. That is exactly what a quick shifter changes. Originally developed for racing, this system allows the next gear to engage without touching the clutch and without rolling off the throttle. Sensors detect pressure on the shift lever and command a split-second ignition cut, unloading the transmission just long enough for the next gear to slide into place. The sensation is difficult to forget. Instead of accelerating, pausing, then accelerating again, the motorcycle surges forward in one uninterrupted motion. Upshifts feel crisp. The chassis stays composed. Hard acceleration becomes smoother and more controlled, especially when the engine is climbing through the strongest part of its power band. This technology was once reserved for professional race teams. Now many manufacturers offer it on premium models, although some deliberately lock the feature behind higher trim packages, software upgrades, or expensive options. But there is a downside. Poor calibration can create harsh shifts, missed gear engagements, and unnecessary stress on drivetrain components. Like many modifications on this list, the benefits only appear when everything is working together properly. Get it right, however, and the motorcycle feels sharper, faster, and strangely effortless. But when gear changes become faster and acceleration becomes more relentless, riders often discover a new obstacle. Not mechanical, but electronic. The motorcycle itself may start stepping in before the rider ever reaches the limit. And that growing conflict between rider input and computer intervention is what leads directly into the next controversial modification. Number 3, traction control reduction or deactivation. This is where the countdown stops being comfortable, because we are no longer talking about airflow, gearing, or shifting speed. We are talking about trust. Modern traction control constantly watches the motorcycle, searching for the slightest hint of rear wheel slip. The instant it senses trouble, the system steps in. Power gets trimmed. Throttle response softens. Acceleration is moderated before the situation can escalate. For most riders, that protection is invaluable. But for experienced riders chasing maximum performance, those interventions can sometimes feel like an invisible hand pulling the motorcycle back. Manufacturers tune these systems for the widest possible audience, accounting for wet roads, worn tires, unpredictable conditions, and riders with vastly different skill levels. The result is a safety margin that can feel overly cautious when conditions are ideal. Reducing traction control gives riders more authority over the motorcycle. But on many modern bikes, traction control isn't the only system managing power. Hidden underneath is another layer of factory intervention, which leads directly to the next restriction. Number 2, torque limiter removal. This is where many riders discover a surprising truth. Sometimes the motorcycle is not lacking power. It is being denied access to it. Hidden inside the ECU of many modern motorcycles are torque management strategies designed to moderate how aggressively the engine delivers its strength. Manufacturers use them to protect driveline components, satisfy testing requirements, reduce wheelies, and create a more predictable experience for everyday riders. The engine may be capable of more. The software simply chooses not to allow it. Remove those electronic boundaries, and the change is immediately noticeable. The motorcycle pulls harder through the lower and middle rev range. Roll-on acceleration feels stronger. Throttle inputs produce a more immediate reaction, making the machine feel less restrained and more willing to surge forward. This is why torque limiter removal has become one of the most sought-after ECU modifications among performance enthusiasts. If you've gotten value from this countdown, hit like and subscribe. It helps us keep creating motorcycle content that goes beyond the usual advice and into what really matters. Removing torque limiters reveals performance many riders never knew existed. But by this point, a bigger pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Every restriction we've discussed is part of a larger factory strategy, an understanding that brings us to the final entry on the list. Number 1, full ECU derestriction package. And here it is, the modification that sits above everything else on this list. Because it does not remove a single limitation, it removes entire layers of them. Throughout this countdown, we have looked at throttle restrictions, torque management, speed governors, hidden electronic features, and factory power limits. What connects all of them is one component, the ECU, the motorcycle's digital brain. It decides how the engine responds, how aggressively power is delivered, and how much of the machine's true capability is allowed to reach the rider. A full ECU derestriction package rewrites those priorities. Fueling becomes more precise. Throttle response sharpens. Artificial limits disappear. The motorcycle feels stronger, smoother, and dramatically more alive. And that's what every forbidden mod on this list really proves. Many of the limits riders feel aren't mechanical at all. They're factory compromises built into the motorcycle from day one. Once you understand those compromises, you stop guessing and start making smarter performance decisions. But this is only one chapter of the story. The next video uncovers another side of motorcycling most riders never see. Click the next video to continue the road trip. Join our tribe by subscribing. And don't forget to like this video.